The Happy Prince.
Oscar Wilde, a famous Irish poet and playwright of the 19th century, wrote a collection of stories for children in 1888. This is a touching story about an unusual pair of very kind souls.
There was once a prince who had everything he wanted, so he was never sad. His people called him the Happy Prince. When the Happy Prince died, his people had a statue made of him. The statue was made of lead covered in gold. The eyes were made of blue gems. The statue was put up on top of a tall pillar in the middle of the town. In that country, the winters were very cold, so every autumn the swallows flew away to a warmer place. That year, one little swallow was late. The night he came to the town, he landed right between the feet of the Happy Prince. The little swallow was just settling down to sleep when he felt a drop of water. He looked up to see tears falling from the prince's eyes.
"Why are you crying?"
asked the swallow. "Because of all the unhappy things I can see from here,"
"What can you see?"
asked the swallow. "Far away in a small room lives a poor woman," said the prince. "Her little boy lies ill in bed, but his mother has no money for medicines. He will surely die. Little swallow, will you take her the red ruby from my sword? It can save her son's life." So the swallow picked out the gem and flew off with it to the woman's house. The boy was tossing about in his bed, but his mother was so tired she had fallen asleep with her head on the table. The swallow put the ruby beside her. Then back he flew to tell the Happy Prince.
"It's funny,"
He said,
"but I don't feel cold anymore."
"That's because you did a good deed," said the prince. All the same, the swallow still wanted to fly away to the warm land where his brothers and sisters had gone. So that night he said to the prince,
"Goodbye, I'm off now."
"Little swallow," replied the prince, "don't go yet. I can see a young man in a bare room where there is no fire. He is trying to write, but his hand is too cold to hold the pen. And he has nothing to eat. Take one of my eyes. They are made of blue gems."
"But I cannot do that,"
cried the swallow. "Please do as I ask," begged the prince. So the swallow picked out one of the gems from the statue's eyes and flew with it to the young man. He dropped the gem into a bunch of flowers on the table. When the young man saw it, he was so pleased that he forgot he was hungry and went on with his work.
"Now I can pay my rent and buy some food,"
he said. Back flew the swallow to tell the prince the good news.
"And now, goodbye,"
he added. "Don't go yet," pleaded the prince. "Look down there. Do you see that little girl? She was trying to sell matches, but her hands were so cold that she dropped them in the wet and now they are of no use. Her father will scold her when she gets home. You must pick out the gem from my other eye and give it to her."
"But if I do that, you won't be able to see at all,"
cried the swallow.
"You will be blind."
"Please do as I say," begged the prince. So the swallow took the blue gem and dropped it in the little girl's hand. "How pretty!" she smiled when she saw it, and she ran off home to give it to her father. Once more the swallow flew back to the prince.
"I cannot leave you now that you're blind," I will stay with you and you can use my eyes to see.
The prince wanted the swallow to fly over the town and tell him what he saw. One day the swallow saw two little boys under a bridge, trying to keep each other warm. Along came a policeman and told them to go home. He did not know that they had no home to go to. They just got up and went out hand in hand into the rain. When he heard this, the prince was very sad. "I have no gems left," he said, "but my clothes are made of gold. You must pick off a bit and give it to those poor children." Every day the swallow saw someone who needed help, and before long all the gold on the prince had been given away. He stood on the top of his pillar, looking dull and grey. But the faces of the poor children were no longer white. Their cheeks were red, and their thin arms and legs grew nice and round. They no longer had to beg for bread. Then the snow came. The poor little swallow got colder and colder, but he would not go away from the prince. At last he knew that his end had come.
Goodbye, dear prince,
he whispered as he fell at the statue's feet. "Goodbye," replied the prince, and something broke inside him. It was his heart. Next day the mayor and the town councillors passed by the pillar and looked up at the statue.
"Dear me, how shabby our prince looks,"
they cried.
"He seems to have lost all his jewels, and someone has stolen his gold clothes. And look, there's a dead bird at his feet. We can't have that here. It must be taken away at once."
"We'd better take the statue down too,"
said another councillor.
"We'll put up a better one in its place. Whose shall we put this time?"
"Mine, of course,"
said the mayor. They took down the prince's statue and melted the lead to make the new one. But the workmen found a broken heart inside that would not melt. So they threw it on the dust heap where the little dead swallow was lying. That night God told his angels,
"Bring me the two most precious things in this town."
They brought him the broken heart and the dead swallow. And God said,
"You are right. This little bird shall always sing in my garden of paradise, and the happy prince shall praise my name forever."
Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.